Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. I'm interrupting my series on Who's Buying You to share a recent interview I conducted. But my series on Who's Buying You will continue next week. So today I got a special guest. You guys know I don't have a lot of guests, but the ones I do, they mean something to me, and I think a lot of them. And today is Mr. Jason Haines, and he's gotten actually certified. I think it's on 3 of my books, but I'm gonna let him introduce himself. He knows far more about him than I do. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you for having me today, Mac. I really appreciate you having me on. I know a few weeks back I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you had talked about having people come on for a possible interview and everything. And I'm like, I want to reach out to Mac because I've talked to you before a couple of times on the phone. An avid listener to all your podcasts, and really that's where I got an accidental start in listening to your podcast, is just through one day I was looking up blue collar jobs. Really love the blue collar field and everything, and grew up in the blue collar field in Southeast Ohio.
Okay.
One of the things you always say is I speak 2 languages. I speak hillbilly and English, and that's really where your podcast kind of stuck with me as far as being able to take a listen to them. But yeah, I just grew up in Southeast Ohio, went into manufacturing, worked on the front lines, went into leadership, in a basic leadership role. I was really good at it. Well, then I started advancing in leadership roles as far as getting into supervision and then production management, and then possibly wanted to go into operations management, but got into that production management role, and I was just struggling as far as trying to figure out how to have time and also be able to lead people and teach them the things that I wanted to teach them. And that's really my story in a nutshell. As far as I became passionate in manufacturing, and then leadership, and then lean management, and put the 3 things together, and then developed into the where I'm at today.
Yeah. And like you said, I say I speak English and country, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Some people call it hillbilly.
Yep.
But sometimes I'll be in different areas of the country, and they'll say, "Oh, I speak English and hillbilly. I speak English and Southern, or we all got our terms for our country talk, right?" And that's just part of me being authentic.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I try to tell people, is that a lot of times people from different parts of the country are speaking the same language, or they may be saying it different ways, and they're saying the same thing. Like,
exactly.
Just from where I'm from, like I said, I'm from Ohio. I'm from the southeast corner of Ohio. My wife's from the southwest corner, and we say pop where I'm from. They say soda where they're from.
So, okay, we say Coke down here in the South.
Yeah, exactly. So
everything's a Coke.
Yep. Yeah. Everything's a Coke, and everything's it doesn't matter if it's a Sprite, a Dr. Pepper, or anything. But yeah, it's really just about connecting with people and getting out there. And I started listening to your podcast, like I said, accidentally one day. I was trying to figure out how to become a better leader. I'd read a few books, and some of them didn't stick with me. But for some reason, when I first listened to your podcast, it stuck with me because of the fact that I could relate to your story more than I could relate to a lot of other stories, because I was trying to figure out how to put it into my level of being more at the front lines and helping people out and everything, and how to save that time. And also, you always talk about the stories about when you first got into leadership, of having, in a sense, a bad attitude. And that's really where I was. I had a bad attitude, and I thought that everybody was against me and not there to help me out. And then I started listening to your podcast. I'm like, really, if I start looking at it and everything, they're not against me. They're there to help me out. And if I don't start helping, not using them in the bad sense, but using them to help, and me also helping them out, I'm not going to advance my career, and I'm not going to be able to help the people that I'm trying to help at the front lines.
Yeah. So you saying you discovered me through my podcast?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I decided to buy the first book I bought. I can't remember the title of it. I know it's got the orange writing on the cover. Was the very first book that I bought.
Probably the supervision book, maybe. It's got the guys with the orange hats.
Yep. Yeah. That one.
Got the guys walking with the guy in the fronts with a tie on, and a couple guys following, like the leaders leading the.
Yep.
How long ago was that? You remember?
It was probably good 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, we've been interacting so long, I couldn't remember, how we met, and I didn't even really remember, but that's been a while. It's been a long while.
Yeah, it was about 6-7 years ago, and I would listen to you on the way into work. Living here in Phoenix now, Arizona, at that time, in the mornings driving into work, I had plenty of time to listen to podcasts because the traffic at that time was just busy. So I would listen to you going into work, and then I would listen to you coming home from work. And I think I was probably at that time, you probably had about 100, maybe 200 podcasts out there.
Probably less than that, because I'm on my 6th season now. I was just trying to think about it. So yeah, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And,
okay,
but I got 100 podcasts really quick, because to start with, I did them every day, and they were shorter.
Okay,
I started doing them every few days, because what I was trying to do is get a lot of content. When I first started, I didn't have a lot of content. So if I picked up somebody like you, I wanted to have some content they could go back and listen to. So I started out quick and short, and then got a little longer and not as frequently. And now I'm doing them, once a week. And at some point I may do them once every 2 weeks or once a month, as I get busier. Plus right now I got 350 some episodes. There's a lot of content out there, but I got a lot more books to, do my series on. So I'm always writing books. I'm always reading. So I don't know if I'll ever cut back or not. The main thing is just time to do it. So go ahead.
Well, the funny thing, speaking of books and everything, the second one I actually had was the Blue Collar Kaizen, with it to basically lead lean teams. And that's really what I was trying to do, because of the position I was in. I was trying to lead people at the front lines in lean and trying to teach them how to better their processes and everything. But I wasn't in charge of I wasn't technically in charge of a team. I wasn't a manager or anything in that position, but I was in the lean deployment, and I went through that book, and that's really where I started to learn how to lead teams without having that whole title. So I didn't have the title, but I was able to influence people in order to teach them how to better their processes and get them the help that they needed at the front lines. And that's really where I developed a lot of my leadership and everything, and realized from listening to a lot of your podcasts and listen to a lot of other people that I started reading. And the funny thing, you talk about reading, from where I do, and it's probably the same from where you came from. Reading as a guy back in the day was not what you did, because we beat our chest and we're tougher than everybody else, and
we always know everything already.
Yeah, we always know everything. And you can't tell us that we don't know something, because we do know that. And I was like, I wish, and now I want to teach my kids that. I want to tell them to pick up books. I wish somebody had told me to pick up books at least once a month, if not multiple times a month. And you don't even have to take hours out of your day. You can read for 20 minutes. You can read, you can set
it. Keep that drip going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I took from a lot of your podcasts and a lot of your books, is just be consistent, be consistent, be present, and keep improving what you do every day. And when you keep improving what you do every day, then you'll be able to have more time to help other people out. And I always talk a lot of the posts that I talk on LinkedIn and everything is lessen the amount of busyness you have in your schedule. And when I say busyness, I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's just going back and saying you're going to be lazy. And I'm like, no, what I'm saying is, instead of doing stuff that doesn't matter, find the stuff that doesn't matter in your daily schedule, put stuff that does matter in your daily schedule, lessen the amount of time that you are spending on that stuff that doesn't matter, so you can provide help for other people. like you've done with your podcasts and your books and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's awesome, and in a few minutes, I'm gonna get to what you're literally doing now, who you do it with, that sort of thing. I want to give you a good plug because
Okay.
I don't do what you do anymore, and I don't know
Yeah.
a whole lot of people who value what I value, who do what I used to do and what you're
Yeah.
still doing. So my audience will hear you as a resource, but I just don't want to leave that part about your kids just yet. Because how old are your kids and how many?
So I got a 2-year-old boy and a 5-year-old daughter. So I'm 45 years old. So my wife and I started having kids late. Of course, at the time, how we ended up, my wife and I ended up meeting was through a friend of mine introduced us. He was a guy that I played baseball with back in Ohio and was her roommate at the time and kept trying to get us to date. We ended up dating, got married when we was around 35, I think I was. No, actually, probably later than that. 37, I think.
Okay.
And we had the 2-year-old or the 5-year-old, and then the two, and he's not a COVID baby. We was planning on having the baby during that time, and just so happened he was born during COVID. And the funny thing is I look back and I'm like, I didn't think I'd ever have kids, and now I have them, and just being able to teach them the things and that my parents may have meant the best for us, but didn't get to teach us in those times. And it's just fun seeing them grow, and it's chaos. They'll put it that way when you got them that young. But it's so fun because like right now my daughter's in kindergarten and she's where she's at. She's learning the preamble and today they did a Veterans Day thing where they sang "Proud to be an American" and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Now my boy, I always say I have a girl and I have a boy because she's into the dancing and entertaining, and he's into the sports and the trucks and the cars and balls. And I think the only thing they actually do together is ride their scooters and play on the playset outside.
Okay, so that's awesome. Have you happened to? I'm sure you probably know about it, but if not, have you got 7 Habits for Happy Kids by chance?
I haven't. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, that one's for really young kids. It's like a big book. It's a big picture book, but it's there's 7 habits for kids, and then there's 7 habits for teens, and 7 habits for marriages, 7 habits for families. 7 habits for highly effective people, which is the original kind of book, but the 7 habits for kids, you definitely your 5-year-old's ready for that. Maybe even your 2-year-old, but that's and I shared, just like I'm sharing with you, I shared that with a guy one time. I was leading a lean event and the maintenance guy was on there, and he's about your age and or probably my age. I'm 54, so he probably was closer to my age. And I told him about it, and some several months out of the blue, I got a random call. I remember I was living in Auburn, Alabama at the time, and I was in my garage doing something. I remember when he called and answered the phone, and he was so excited. He was fired up, and he kind of was shook up. You tell he was emotional, like maybe tears, kind of emotional a little bit. And he just calling me, just wanting to thank me for he got that book finally. He didn't get it when I first said it, but he never forgot about it, and he got it. And he said, I just want to thank you for how much that book helped me build a relationship with my grandchildren. He said, I got it and we started doing it with them. And he said, I learned a lot, but it's simple. It's simple because it's for kids, but it's to help them learn being proactive, begin with the end in mind. I haven't actually seen it, but I've heard people recommend it, and I've recommended it, and they tried it, give me that feedback. So maybe something you want to check out. And that way I would have given anything, Jason, to even be aware of this stuff for my kid. My son's 32 now, but if he was 2 or 5 when I discovered this stuff, our relationship, our life, his life, everything be completely different. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. And that's actually it's from listening to your podcast and that I wanted to, but then listening to the things you talked about as far as leading your kids and everything, I wanted to be able to and my wife wanted to be out. I know I pointed back there. She's in the house today. But anyhow, we want to be able to teach our kids how to lead, but also that failure is not always bad. like there's going to be times that you fail, and that's where you learn from those mistakes and how to overcome those mistakes, and the possibility that there's going to be people that don't like you, and there's going to be the possibility that people do that they love being around you. And it's something that we want them to understand, because growing up where my parents weren't bad. Like I said, early on, they was great, but growing up where I grew up at was rural Ohio, out in the middle of the sticks. And a lot of times people would shelter their kids out there, and I wasn't always exposed to a lot of stuff being out where I was at. And that's what we're trying to expose our kids to, is more leadership opportunities. My daughter currently, we actually didn't advance her at the dance that she's at, because we wanted her to learn how to teach other kids and be more of a team player than just a me player. I always say that a lot of times. A lot of times in today's sports culture with kids and stuff, I don't want my kids to always think that they have to be the person that's at the top of the hill. Sometimes that they can be a role player and also be the person that teaches other people how to grow and everything.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's good stuff. The earlier they learn that, I mean, you're going to help them. Whatever their life turns out to be, it's going to be completely different if you were not really familiar with all this type content, this personal growth and leadership. You're going to give them a serious head start.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do is give them a head start, as far as help them understand that and like I said, Mac, I wish like you said before, I wish that I could go back and do things differently. Now, don't get me wrong. I've looked back on my life. It used to be I looked back on my life and thought everybody was trying to hold me back, but I've looked back now on my life and I'm like, if I had went back and done this differently, this probably would have been different. And it's not always, well, to be honest with you, it's usually not anybody else's fault. It's usually you got to be able to take look in the mirror and say, hey, I was part of this problem as well. What could I have changed in order to become better, or what could I have changed in order to have a different outcome? That way, in the future, you have a different outcome as far as what's going on.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, and as I mentioned, you got licensed and certified, and we're going to be stopping that at the end of this year because we're creating all of our own training videos. But you'll get to have that license, and everybody else who already has it, you'll have it the rest of your life. But before we talk about that real quick, though, what is your day-to-day, like your work, your professional job today? So what are you doing? Where are you doing it at, and that kind of stuff?
My typical day-to-day is a lot of going into manufacturers, taking a look at their processes. And the biggest reason, as you said, as you got your start, I also got my start in lean manufacturing or lean management. And the story behind that is how I ended up getting really passionate about lean. Is somebody told me to, in order to advance my career, do a Lean Six Sigma, either the green belt or the black belt. Well, I and I actually got both the green and a black belt. But I realized a lot of what Six Sigma has, you can't really apply it to the front line and teach people at the front line that kind of stuff. You want to be able to teach them lean because it's easier to use, a simpler process, and it's easier to apply to the front lines. Where Six Sigma is more statistics and get more in depth. So I started the whole lean process, and that's when I really got into. I was always interested in leadership, and that's how I got really interested in leadership. At first, the very first lean process that I put into place was successful in the fact that it reduced our scrap, it reduced our rework, and it upped our productivity, but it didn't do what I really wanted it to do, was help give me more time to help other people out. I was still stressed out. So that's where I basically stepped back. And as I said, to go back to my point, when I go into manufacturing facilities, what I'm trying to do is help them reduce the stress of their supervisors and their production managers, so they're able to help and grow their people at the front lines through process improvement of lean and helping them out. So yeah, my day to day is typically just helping manufacturers out, whether that's through training, facilitation, or consulting work. It just depends on what the organization wants out of me.
Okay. And you travel all over the country, or you work in a certain region or certain city, or how's that work?
I'm pretty much all over the country. As of right now, my region is actually the state of Arizona, state of New Mexico, and Southern California. But usually I can get out and go to other parts of the country. Really, the only part of the country I don't go to is Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas and Arkansas, and that's because our corporate office is in that area, so they usually take those places.
Okay, so that's kind of the center of the center of the southern U.S., basically, right down the middle almost.
Yep.
What city again? You're in Arizona. Which city is it?
I am in Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm in a suburb called Gilbert, Arizona.
Okay, yeah, Phoenix. I always remember Phoenix has Rustler's Roost up there.
Yeah. So, and the funny thing is, Mac, I don't know how long ago it's been since you've been down to the Phoenix area.
It's been several years. I've only been to that restaurant once, but I go again next time I'm in Phoenix.
Yeah, and it's still great, but it's what you probably remember when you was here to now. The growth in freaking Phoenix is just
really.
In the 10 years or 11 years I've been here, when I first started, my wife used to teach at a dance company out here, and it was cornfields and hayfields. Now it's basically grown up to the point where the metro. Well, before we had got on here, I was just talking to a couple of guys, and there's a steel mill that used to be like you had to travel to it. It was almost a half a day's trip. Now it's literally part of the urban sprawl.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, Phoenix is a neat place, but thinking about it though, it was probably before COVID. I think we were out there. We've spoken in Phoenix. Sometimes we've been in Phoenix, I think, and drove. We've spoken with the city of Yuma and the county of Yuma, the government out there. And then sometimes we land in Tucson. I've spoken in Tucson, and we spoke to a friend of mine was a major in the Air Force down there. And one time we went down there and met with him and spoke to a bunch of the officers in his unit that, he was responsible for. But we like both of those cities. Tucson got the big cactus there. They're awesome down there. But anyway, we ain't here to talk about all that necessarily. I'm just kind of relating to your area out there. So do you want to, and we're not done yet by no means, unless you need to be, but do you want to plug yourself or your company? How would somebody get in touch with you right here in the middle in case they don't listen to the end?
So typically how you can get a hold of me, I'm active on LinkedIn. You can find me through Jason Haines, or you can get a hold of me through our company, Industrial Solutions. As I was saying, we do lean training. Lean training, facilitation, and consulting work. I've also do a little bit of leadership training as far as helping people out through your blue collar leadership and everything.
Yeah, so because you're licensed on the front lines of book, the supervision book, and the culture book, three different books. Yep. And so, how you spell your last name so they get it right?
You spell my last name Haines. And I said that slowly because I do speak hillbilly, as I was saying earlier, and a lot of times my accent does not come across I did a training about 2 years ago, during COVID, and we had the mask on, and with the accent and the mask, there was a guy in there, literally, when I would say Uber, he thought I was saying Uber. And I'm like, so enunciate. I've gotten better in enunciating. A lot of that's, so my wife also works for one of the local news stations, so she's kind of gotten me to enunciate much better. I still have trouble with some words, as far as like I'm trying. There's a word that I use quite often, and I do screw it up big time when I say it.
Yeah, that's what Rhea tells me. She says, you don't enunciate well. I'm like, I'm doing the best I can do.
Exactly.
I tell you might can use this, Jason, whenever I'm speaking, most of the time on the stage or whatever. I tell people I speak with a lot of apostrophes, and you know when you see them in writing, they're replacing the letters, but when you hear them, you don't understand it. So I have to help people. I know I speak with a lot of apostrophes, and you can't see them, but if you think something missing, there's an apostrophe right there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually what I'm like. I get to talking, and a lot of time, and I don't know if you do this, a lot of times I get to talk and I say a word and it triggers not a different thought, but something that goes with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you got to go down and dig deeper to give it some supporting content.
Yep. So it's like, and I've always said, and I think it's where I grew up at a lot of times, just trying to explain to people, because as I was saying, until I started getting into the whole leadership content and everything, you always were trying to prove the other person wrong. And after I got into leadership and taking a look at how I was acting towards people and doing stuff, and realizing that I was part of the problem, I would always argue my point and always try to prove people prove other people that they was wrong and I was right. And then you would stop talking to people because you would get upset with them, and they don't know what they're talking about. Where now I've got a more of an attitude of, I want to hear other people's stories and want to understand what they're going through. And I do understand, like at the front lines, I do understand there's other people, and that's really how I started really following you, and why I wanted to help other people out. Because I had friends at the front lines at manufacturing facilities, or I had friends that couldn't work in manufacturing facilities that I wanted to help out. And I shouldn't say they couldn't work there. They just couldn't because of their circumstances, such as they may have had a kid out of wedlock, or they may be taking care of a parent and the hours just didn't work out. And I wanted to be able to help those people out. Or like people in the manufacturing facilities that I knew could be in leadership, or that I knew could be in a trade or something. And you heard it as well as I've heard it today. We just can't find any skilled workers. And I'm like, a lot of times you got to walk out and look at the front lines, and they're right there. You just got to
waiting to be developed.
Yeah.
Waiting to be unleashed.
Yeah.
waiting to get noticed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I've wanted to help those people. And I know the song that came out a while back, you probably heard it, the Rich Man North of Richmond.
Oh yeah,
talked about.
Yep. Olive Anthony.
Yeah. A lot of those people that he's talking about in that song is like they want help, they just don't know the direction to go. And that's where I was. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to turn to, and that's where, when I came across your podcast, a lot of what you talked about was like, your story was like hearing my story, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, maybe it is not just myself, but maybe it's because I didn't know which direction or who to turn to and what to do, and listen to a lot of the stuff you would talk about once you started going into leadership and stuff, and people putting that faith in you and showing you that there's a different direction. That's when, well, a lot of your life changed. That's when a lot of my life changes. It's people helping me out and realizing that they're helping me out. I didn't have to do it on my own. And there's a better path and a better way to help people out. And one of the frustrating things I usually hear is when we can't find new people, or we can't find enough skilled people. I'm like, you got them right there at the front lines. You got to start changing your processes in order to get them time, because a lot of times they have a family. They're not going to go to a school if they got a family or something like that. So
yeah, if you'd actually tap into those people and let them be part of the decision making and all that, if you'd actually use the team as a team instead of just a group of people to do some work, you'd actually build a team, which what I call low impact leaders, managers of people. They're never going to do that, but high impact leaders of people who are also always high impact managers of processes and things. Those kind of leaders would take the same group of people and turn them into a team, and they may disrupt everything they've ever been doing, but they'll be highly efficient. They'll become flexible because that's what they want. They want flexibility. They want results, and they want all this, but they also want to have a life of some kind. Yeah. But a lot of times it's all about the leader. It's all about me. How do I create what I want? How do I get what I want? I'm just, pay these people fair, give them some benefits, and they ought to just be happy to come along. But they're people too. They've got ambitions and dreams and desires and a life.
Yeah. And I can't remember if you said it or if it's somebody else I've heard say it. Also, the way you treat those people is going to reflect how they sell the company outside of.
Oh yeah, I talk about that a lot.
Okay, that's I was thinking
100% true. Yeah, what I talk about is, if you want to know what all the people inside of your company are saying about your company on the outside, how hard is it to find people, or how hard is it to find good people, or how hard is it to find top talent? And because everybody, most leaders, I'll ask them, do you see everybody at every level in your organization? Do you see them and treat them as a culture ambassador? Because that's, I say brand ambassador because that's what everybody relates to. But what I'm really talking about is a culture ambassador, because they're spreading word of mouth constantly, everybody. And everybody who's ever worked there, including the ones who've been fired, they're still talking about the company, even though they may have been gone 10 or 15 years. And if you want to attract top talent, you got to get everybody in there. You got to lead them in such a way that they want to spread positive word of mouth advertisement nonstop.
Exactly. And even better is that they're talking about trying to get high school kids and younger people interested in manufacturing or in blue collar trades. And I'm like, well, you got to realize, if you don't treat the parents that are working at the front lines well, they're selling to their kids and telling their kids. The case in point, my dad and my grandpa told me to never go into manufacturing. Now I ended up in manufacturing, but that's because I partied too much at college and didn't take that too seriously. I got a degree, but it was after I went and got into manufacturing. But I thought I disappointed my parents because I went into that. So at first I had a bad attitude, thinking this is just a rum-dum job. I'm going nowhere. And a lot of frontline leadership, or not just frontline leadership, even upper management leadership, has to realize that when you treat the frontline employees badly, they're going home to tell their kids, you do not want to go into that field. You need to,
and their friends at the kids' ball game on Friday night or Saturday afternoon, wherever they, when somebody says just natural network and you meet somebody and they say where you work, what you do, what's it like? I mean, they about to start advertising for your company, and leaders have to understand that because it matters.
Yep. A lot of times the easiest way to get employees into your company is the people with the front lines. If you treat them well, they're going to tell their friends about it, and they'll bring people in. And usually when you bring people in that know each other, they work a lot better together because they don't have to go through that whole relationship building process in order to work together. So,
and if they recommend to their boss and the boss actually hires them, they want to help that person be successful, especially if they know them.
Yep.
But that's where when you do that, you're starting to include the workforce in decision making. I mean, about who we going to hire. So that's pretty cool. So what's something personal that you've learned either from my books or somebody else's books, but it doesn't matter. But what's a personal couple of one or two principles in your personal life that's really resonated that kind of made you think, pause, maybe shift directions or something like that?
So I think the biggest thing, the biggest principle I've learned, not just from your book, but also from picking up the Bible and a lot of other things, is always take a look in the mirror and realize that you have a choice, whether it's a choice of what you're doing or a choice of how you do things or a choice of how you're living your life, is really one of the big principles I've learned. And I think I spoke a little bit about when I was talking about my kids. I want to be able to teach them that, as far as understanding that you have a choice throughout your life. And that's one of the biggest principles I picked up through a lot of leadership books such as yours. I was actually taking a look at Dichotomy of Leadership by Dr. Williams this morning, and reading some of the quotes in there, but just taking a look at yourself and realizing it actually really does. I'm not a self-help person, but I really do realize that it does take, you got to start working on what you do and yourself before you're able to help others. Because if as I was saying earlier, if you're busy, you're not going to be able to help anybody else, because there's always going to be other priorities in the back of your head that you're going to have that take priority over helping other people. And then the second I believe is, and I lost train of thought on this one, is basically, I think, being able to, well, just to go back to it, being able to help others, you got to help yourself first and become less, as I say, less busy, less clutter in your mind. And I'll have to come back to, I know there was a principle as I was talking, there went the whole, I start thinking of other things while I'm talking.
Yep. It happens to me all the time.
I do that quite often. It's funny because they'll be talking and I forget somebody's name because of the fact I start thinking of other things as I'm talking. And it's usually not the person right directly in front of me, but I'll forget people's name of somebody I want to put into that place.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, why am I drawing a blank right now? And then I go thinking outside of my head. So
yeah, I've always think that I try to suppress all that subconscious stuff that, I'm trying to make this point. My subconscious is saying, well, you need to teach. If you're going to say that, you got to say this. And if you're going to say that, well, you got to say that down below that. And when you know a lot about this stuff, leadership or lean, you got to go away. It's like you can't ever get to the bottom of where you actually need to start, because it's not simple to teach.
The whole and I don't know if you do much like networking, and you probably did when you first started, like going into networking groups and stuff, and they're like, you get 30 seconds to talk about what you're here for. I'm like, I can't do this in 30 seconds.
Yeah, you got to have your 30-second elevator speech, they call it, right? You got to be ready. I'm ready for them now, because I got that tagline that says help. What we do is I help leaders engage the front line to improve the bottom line. Through workforce development, the people who lead them and the people who support them. That's, I got that down now. If somebody asks me, I can drop it down, but I used to not have it.
Well, yeah, I'm like, I can't do this in 30 seconds. And I've gotten a better line now, but yeah, at first I was just like, you can't be giving me just, I'm like, I got too much to talk about here.
It's too deep. So
yeah.
It happened to me, because I was going to ask you something you said a minute ago. I was going to mention, but I can't even think of it now, because that's what happens, right? You get this overload, you got to suppress, and then you don't get there. But that's I always say, don't worry, I got plenty. I can move on to something else. But so how have you actually used any of the content? I think you mentioned it, the license. Have you taught that to anybody, and what kind of results did you get out of like just sharing it with somebody? And have they, they like it or they don't like it?
So I've actually gotten good results out of when I've brought it in, because what I'll usually do is combine it with the lean training, because I believe that you need to teach people leadership plus lean, because if you don't teach them both principles, they're not going to understand how to build teams, because with lean you need teams. It's not a me work. It's bringing people together and having people work together, rather than trying to do everything and then telling people, well, you have to do it this way. Because I've seen that too many times when you go into places, as far as the places I've worked at, as far as somebody will put a process into place and then get upset when those people weren't following the standards. Well, they didn't even go and start it. You tell a story about this of you went into a place and you was working with the place, and that you had mentioned to the plant manager, production manager, frontline manager, whichever one it was, that you was going to take so-and-so's podium away. And somehow it inadvertently
the platform. Yep.
Yeah, the platform inadvertently got to that person. Well, a lot of times, a lot of places will do that. They'll just go in there and take the person's platform away and basically tell them to deal with it. Where what you're really trying to do is go in there and get everybody to work together, have a bunch of ideas, and make the process to where it fits everybody. Because a lot of times those people at the front lines are already doing the proper process. There's just clutter in between those processes that just needs to be cleaned up in order to make it more efficient and run much smoother. And once they understand that you're not there to hurt them, and that's the big reason I bring in your leadership training, as far
build
as
a relationship, using it to build a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And really, I know a lot of my posts talk about that. As far as I go in and I talk about, you have to build relationships. If you don't have relationships, you're going to be working against a lot of people. Going back to my early days when I was first a frontline, or I was a line lead. I remember the first thing I had to learn was how to lead those people. And in order to lead those people, what I did was I learned a lot of their jobs and learned how to troubleshoot their jobs and how to help them out. And in the summertime, because it was a foundry, in the summertime, I would give them longer breaks in order to get them off the floor much longer, or I would give them inadvertent breaks because they may be overheating or anything, or take the molds off for them, or help them do things that would help them be faster, more efficient. And in that job where I was at was really the bottleneck of the facility. We ended up breaking, I think, the record of wheels poured 2 or 3 times because of the fact that I was willing to go and help those people out. And when I showed that I was willing to help them out, my employees would help me out. And that's really where I developed a lot of my leadership and wanting to help people at the front lines and help them. I wish I had known you back then I could have used a lot of this, because we probably could have done book studies and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, have you done book studies with anybody in your job?
The one I've done one book study with one group that I was doing with, and it really took well at where I was working at with them. So yeah, and I think they learn more from the book study than me just sitting up there regurgitating things.
Yeah, because then they get to tie those principles to their world, literally. Like we don't ever know their world good as they know their world. So so if we can kind of help them tie it, whether they're reading a book or whether you're talking to them in person, once you get that interaction, and you know what's this mean to you, which is basically what they get to do during the book study. They get opportunity to say it, but probably you still see what I always saw, and I still see, and I hate it, but it's just the way it is. But I mean, my background is manufacturing, and manufacturers are probably the least. It's the smallest segment of the people that I support, because they will not stop production to invest in the development of the people. They'll stop it to improve the process.
Yeah.
But it's still hard to even get them to do that, even though the process is going to pay for itself over and over and over. But getting them to slow down to invest in the development of people is almost impossible.
And that's why I did the book study with, I crammed it into my training, basically.
Had to.
So it was like, it was a way to help them out, because I wanted to be able to build relationships with them. And when you sit down and talk to people and get to understand what they're doing, it was easier for us to start implementing what we was doing out on the floor.
Got the mindset right.
Yeah.
But you had a language to talk about stuff. That is, because all you do is provoke thought, raise their level of awareness, and provoke the right thought, and then it's their thought. It ain't your thought anymore. Now it's their thought, and then you become aligned with them, and everybody's more willing to work together. It's that book studies, Jason, and you probably know this, but just for the listeners that maybe don't know it, if you, just like you do a lean team, a Kaizen team, you want a cross-functional team, you get all kind of people from all different areas on there, and it breaks down to silos because they build relationships during your Kaizen event. But same thing happens with book studies, but leaders who haven't done it don't even know it. A lot of them want these silos. We got too many silos. We'll do book studies with people from all these silos, but they just still they won't do it because it takes leadership, and they're not leaders, they're managers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a lot of what I always see, is that it just, you got too many people. And so early on in my career, I remember coming in and giving an answer to the plant manager, and he said something. I said, I assumed, and he looks at me and he goes, and I don't know about I'm kind of cussing. I don't know if I said I assumed, and he said, you know what assume means? And I'm like, no. He goes, it makes an ass out of you and me. And I never even thought of it that way. As far as a lot of times people aren't communicating because they think they're too busy. And when you do sit down with those book studies or sit down with the training and let people talk and start talking to each other and working together, that's when they start realizing that, oh, this person isn't really actually against me. I just made that assumption based off of I was too busy, they're too busy, and we're not working together. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
It's all right. I didn't really even notice it, but it's that's what happens. Everybody's always telling themselves a story, and the problem is whenever we talk to ourselves, we got two problems. One problem is we're always listening. we may not listen to anybody else, but we listen to what we're telling ourselves. And the second part of that it isn't always a problem, but often it's a problem, is we believe what we're telling ourselves is the truth. We think it's always true. I mean, some people take their lives because of what they're telling themselves, and they're not even talking to anybody. They've done cut off everybody, and they've told themselves a story that ain't true, but yet they believe it. That's an extreme, and I share that because people can understand what I just said, because it is an extreme, right? And
to be honest with you, Mac, so my mom passed about 2 years ago, but I think that she went through that, and seeing her go through it, I think that was another thing it kind of taught me of sometimes you got to look into things instead of just going to that extreme of where you shelter yourself and cut everybody off. So yeah, I can fully.
Yep, it's how we see the world as we are. We don't see it as it is. We see it as we are, and that's why Rhea talks on this a lot. She talks about you hear of post-traumatic stress, but she talks about post-traumatic growth. After you go through some stuff to grow because of it is better than having to stress. But she talks about it in a way that I ain't really heard any other people talk about it. But she likes to talk about pre-traumatic growth. Grow so before you go through something that you don't go through it the same kind of way. Like I do today. I don't go through stuff like I used to. I don't even experience like I don't even get involved in all of the problems I used to have. It ain't even something I have to deal with. I grew so much, before the next one came. I don't have to ain't a next one.
Well, it's like you talk, and this is something I've learned for the longest time. You always talked about, it used to be if something happened, you would get upset and
ugly upset.
Yeah, and I was the same way. Like I would get upset because I made that assumption that working in a factory, you would get upset. You wouldn't talk to the other person on the other shift to see what happened, and you just be instantly upset with them and wouldn't even talk to them. There might have been something that happened in the middle of the night that they didn't get to record something, and you're like, well, they just didn't tell me. And I'm like, now as I step back and I'm like, that was stupid. I'm like, now if something happens, I just kind of go, yeah, it's no big deal. Like even the book I'm currently reading, the Economic Parables, that it talks about in there. It used to be, he talks about, he used to get upset if somebody crowded in line. Now he's like, well, what if they didn't know that the line was where it was at? Case in point, World Baseball Classic was down here. I'm a big baseball fan. Went to the World Baseball Classic. The first night I went was Britain versus US. Lines were long, but I knew where the lines were at. Second night was Mexico versus US. There's a big Spanish following down here, so I've never seen the Diamondbacks filled that packed till the World Series this year. Yeah. And the lines were basically, the night of the Britain game was straight. The night of the Mexico game, it was like this.
Zigzagging. Yeah.
We literally walked through the same line, thought we was getting in the back of the line that I'd gotten in the night before. And here the back of that line was like literally not even close to where we was at.
Oh, you done cut through a bunch of lines, it sounds like. Repeatedly, I guess.
Yeah. So we didn't know that the line was there, and we accidentally cut in line, and people were giving us dirty looks, and we're like, we didn't know where we was at. So
yeah. And I got a story at the moment, literally, like right here where we live, they're developing a subdivision across the street. Used to just be woods over there. And they started cutting the timber back in 1st of August. And I think about my neighbors now, because they don't bother me. I don't even. Yeah. I'm just telling it, but I understand how it used to would have bothered me, because every single day, at the end of the day, once they quit, I go out and spray my cars off with my truck and Rhea's car with a water hose, because it's covered in dust every day. And the house is covered in dust, and our back porch, we got a screened in back porch, and every day the tables and the chairs are covered in dust. And it's just life. They got a right to do that, but used to, I'd have been angry about that. I guarantee you, One of my neighbors, actually, he's retired, and he's got a car business, like a car cleaning business. He just does it periodically, but he's high dollar guy. He don't get a lot of work, but he does with the clay bar, and he does like all these ceramic coating. He does some good stuff, but he does it right outside of his garage, right there in his yard. Normally, they basically shut down his part-time business. I bet he's fired up, but I don't even care. I just go out and spray with the hose and thing. I bet my neighbors are irritated because they're the way I used to be, probably more than likely. But that's how I'm talking about pre-traumatic growth. I mean, I ain't had that problem, but I also think about, like, when I'm speaking to construction companies in the future, I never had this level of awareness about, when they go do something like that. I ain't ever lived across the road. But what I know now, if I was that construction company owner, they ain't that many neighbors here affected by it, probably like 5 or 6 houses or something.
Yeah.
First thing I'd do is I'd come over and say what we're going to be doing. I'd go meet the people and tell them what we're going to be doing. And I'd say, I went ahead and purchased you guys a annual pass, up here at the automatic car wash. It's like 5 miles away, probably costs less than $100 or something for a year. I don't know how much it'd be for unlimited. I'd give everybody one of those and, build some trust and some goodwill. I know we're going to get your car dirty, but here's your thing to go get it cleaned, for the next year. And, something like that I would do. But you still might have people going to be mad at you or whatever. But because, see, I guarantee you my neighbors, one of them I know is talking bad about these folks, right? And that's word of mouth for their business. But just things like that, a lot of business owners don't really think about how's their business impacting the community, who's also talking about how they work and how they operate.
Yeah. I think that, even though we always talk about it's social media, I think it's actually gotten worse with social media, because I think we actually communicate less with it, because usually I can't hardly watch the news anymore, because it's like, it's just people yelling at each other. And that's what social media a lot of times is, people yelling at each other without verbally saying it.
Yeah. And trying to make you believe what they believe versus, the news. Instead of the news, I wish we had the old days news where they just tell you what happened in the world and you figure out what to do with it. But there really ain't none of that news. And the only way you're going to get it is you got to read the news, which I read a lot. I read X a lot, but you got to search for it and you got to read through the junk. And there's so much distrust in our world. It's unfortunate. And, health-wise, government-wise, every kind of way, so much loss of trust, and people can't hardly even function.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do or who to believe. Yeah. It's really sad. But I'm doing what I can do to help fix the real root cause. When we're talking lean, is the root cause of every problem we got is character.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being here to help.
I appreciate it as well. Like I said, if I hadn't found you and other people, I'd probably be in the same boat that I was 10 years ago. The complaining and thinking it was everybody else's fault, and not realizing that I had to look in the mirror and look at myself as well, and be part of rather than complaining, be part of the solution.
You got anything you really, really wanted to share that maybe popped up, you didn't get a chance? Or I just like people to be able to understand that there is help out there. People like yourself, like myself, there's a different pathway than what I thought there was when I was early on. I thought, to be honest with you, I thought the only pathway was either you go to college or you go to college, or you go to and I don't mean this derogatory, you go to a blue collar job and become a loser. And I realized that you're not a loser in a blue collar job. You're a contributor.
Yeah, you're a contributor, and there's a lot of good people at the front lines, and there's and really with not just in manufacturing, but also in construction and in the warehouse industry, and in pretty much any frontline blue collar job, there's plenty of people there that they want to do better and they want to see better. You just got to show that you really do care about them and you want them to advance. And one thing, also going back to blue collar jobs, I know we talked a little bit about manufacturing, of not shutting things down. Also showing that you can train them at the front lines and train them in stuff that they need to be trained in. because a lot of times those people at the front lines don't see a pathway. And if you start showing them a pathway to get there, such as something as simple as what me and you do, as far as doing lean training or leadership training, it helps them grow and helps them advance their careers.
Yep. And what you're touching on now, that's one reason I do the book deal, because sometimes all somebody needs is an introduction. Even though I might not get to speak to those folks, they may not get to do book studies, but maybe I speak to 20 or 30 other leaders, and these leaders buy 300 books or 900 books. As soon as we get done recording this podcast, I'm about to go order 3,000 plus books, to ship to a client who is doing book studies with a workforce of 1,800 people. And it's powerful, but a lot of companies get the books, but the people don't do book studies, and they don't hear us speak. We just speak to the leaders, but the leaders will actually go give out the books. And some people, all they need is that introduction, and they'll be curious and they'll open it. And it'll be like me when my friend gave me the 1 hour audio and changed my life, because I fed myself. Once I learned where to eat, I started feeding myself. And a lot of people in any blue collar jobs, they ain't familiar with this type stuff. So thank you for getting out there and giving it to them. So I think it looks like we got almost an hour wrapped up. That didn't take long, did it?
No. Actually, it doesn't typically. There's times I've been in places that it felt like it took forever.
On podcasts, you mean? Something like that?
Yeah. A couple of podcasts, it's like you get to the 15-minute point, and it's like, are you kidding me? I still got that long.
Yeah, we could go all day talking. Ain't no doubt about that, because we're on the same level and we value a lot of the same stuff. So really, really appreciate you being, on here to share what it means to you and what you're doing. And I hope maybe some of my audience who needs some lean support, Jason Haines, Haines, look him up on LinkedIn at a minimum. Follow him on LinkedIn, because he puts out some stuff like I do. He helps, I put out the daily drip. I don't know if you do it daily, but you do it pretty consistently.
Yeah. I typically do it daily. Usually at 7:30 Arizona time. And I say Arizona because we don't observe.
Y'all don't change. All right. So, I appreciate you being here, and thank you. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. That's good with you?
Yep. Thank you, Mac.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Everybody, talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.